He fixed a crying hatchling's toy. Then the Dragon Emperor arrived. The wind howled through the metal alleys of the outpost, carrying the scent of rust and smoke. The colony was quiet, too quiet for a world that once roared with the engines of trade ships. Machines slept under sheets of dust, and the people who once dreamed here had learned to whisper instead of laugh. Eli sat alone in his workshop, a place that smelled of oil and warm metal. The light flickered weakly above his head, fighting against the shadows. On his table lay a pile of broken things, pieces of forgotten toys, cracked drone wings and rusted parts that no one cared about anymore, but Eli cared. He fixed things because it gave him peace, a small order in a universe that had forgotten kindness. Outside, thunder rolled over the colony and a storm began to brew. Eli lifted his head as the door creaked open. At first, he thought it was the wind, until he heard it, a sound that didn't belong to this dead world. It was soft, trembling almost like a child's sob. He turned, and in the doorway stood a small creature, no taller than his chest. Its scales shimmered faintly under the light, gold mixed with hints of emerald. Tiny wings drooped at its sides, and its tail brushed against the floor. It was a dragon hatchling, one of the rarest beings to ever step into human territory. The little one clutched something close to its chest, a small metallic toy shaped like a bird. Its eyes, bright and wet, blinked up at Eli. The toy's wing hung loose. Broken beyond recognition, the hatchling sniffled, letting out a tiny whimper that made Eli's heart twist. He had seen many strange things in his life, but never this, a dragon child alone, crying, and holding something so fragile. For a long moment, neither moved. Eli only stared, feeling something old stir inside him, a feeling he hadn't known since the war ended. Then the hatchling took a hesitant step forward. The claws clicked against the floor, and its trembling voice whispered something in the ancient tongue of dragons. Eli didn't understand the words, but the tone, the pain, was universal. It was the sound of loss. Eli slowly stood, moving carefully, not to startle it. "Hey there," he said softly, his voice calm. "You're safe here." He pointed to the toy. "Is that yours?" The hatchling nodded weakly, pressing the toy closer. Its small chest shivered as if it was fighting to hold back another sob. Eli took a slow breath. He had heard tales about dragons, creatures of fire and fury, proud and untouchable. But looking at this one, he saw only a child scared and hurt. He crouched low and extended his hand. "Let me fix it for you," he said. The hatchling hesitated, glancing around the room. Its golden eyes flicked toward the door, as if expecting someone or something to come after it. Then finally, it stepped forward and placed the toy in Eli's rough, grease-stained hands. The metal was cold, ancient, and more complex than any toy Eli had seen before. It wasn't human-made. The design was delicate, filled with tiny gears that pulsed faintly with energy. Eli felt a small vibration run through his fingertips, as if the toy itself was alive. The hatchling sat down beside the table, watching silently, its tail curled around its body. Eli could feel its gaze following every movement of his hands. He began to work using tools that were older than he was. He tightened screws, reconnected small wires, and adjusted gears with the precision of someone who had spent his life mending broken things. The sound of soft mechanical clicks filled the silence, like tiny heartbeats echoing in the room. Minutes passed, and the storm outside grew louder. Lightning flashed through the windows, bathing the workshop in brief, blinding light. For a moment, Eli thought he saw a shadow move outside, tall and sharp like wings stretching across the night. But when he looked again, there was nothing. The toy bird finally clicked back into shape. Its small eyes glowed faintly with blue light, and its wings twitched. Eli smiled softly and turned toward the hatchling. "There you go," he said. "Good as new." The hatchling blinked in surprise, then let out a soft sound, half chirp, half laugh. It held the toy close and pressed its head against Eli's arm. A gesture of pure gratitude. Eli froze, feeling warmth spread through his chest. He hadn't felt this in years, that strange mix of joy and ache that only kindness could bring. But then a low hum filled the air. The lights flickered once, twice, and then steadied. Eli frowned. His instincts told him something wasn't right. He turned toward the window again, and this time he saw it. Two glowing eyes, far away but focused directly on him. They weren't human. The hatchling suddenly stiffened. Its wings fluttered nervously, and it pressed closer to Eli's leg, whispering something too soft to catch. The air grew heavier, like the weight of a gaze pressing down on the workshop. Eli stepped back slowly, looking into the darkness outside. The eyes blinked once and then disappeared. But the feeling remained. Someone, or something, had been watching. He turned back to the hatchling, whose eyes shimmered with both fear and trust. "It's okay," Eli murmured, though his voice wasn't steady anymore. "You're safe here. I promise." But as thunder rolled again and the shadows danced across the walls, Eli couldn't shake the thought that his promise might already be broken. Far above the storm clouds, beyond the human colony's reach, a fortress floated in the endless night. Its spires pierced the sky like blades of black crystal, glowing faintly with molten veins of gold. It was the palace of the Dragon Emperor, ruler of 1,000 worlds and master of all living flame. Inside the throne hall, silence ruled. The air shimmered with power. Every step on the obsidian floor echoed for miles. Dragons of every size and color lined the sides of the chamber, their scales glittering like living jewels, and at the very center, upon a throne carved from the bones of ancient stars, sat the Emperor himself. His scales were a deep crimson that shimmered with the light of dying suns. His eyes, those same eyes that had peered through the storm to the human colony below, were filled with an emotion he could not name. In his claws, he held a crystal orb, and within it, flickering like a fragile dream, was an image of the human mechanic, Eli. The Emperor's gaze was unblinking. His talons traced slow circles over the orb. The image showed Eli repairing the tiny toy bird, his hands steady, his expression calm. The Emperor's massive wings shifted slightly as he leaned closer. The sight stirred something buried deep within him, a memory, one he had tried for centuries to forget. At the far end of the hall, one of his ministers stepped forward, a sleek, silver-scaled dragon with a voice like crackling flame. "My Emperor," he said carefully, "our seers detected an energy flare from the human sector. Permission to investigate?" The Emperor didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the orb, watching as the hatchling smiled, hugging the toy close. The Emperor's jaw tightened. The toy was familiar, painfully familiar. "No," the Emperor said at last. His voice was low but heavy enough to shake the walls. "I will see this myself." A ripple of shock moved through the gathered dragons, for the Dragon Emperor never left his throne for something so small, but none dared question him as the Emperor rose. His immense shadow stretched across the floor like a storm-swallowing light. The golden patterns on the walls flickered as his presence drew the air tight. He stepped toward the great balcony, and with a single beat of his wings the palace trembled. Lightning cracked across the sky as he vanished into the storm. Down below, Eli sat in his workshop, still trying to calm the hatchling. The toy bird perched on his shoulder now. Chirping softly, the storm had not eased. Yet Eli felt strangely safe, as if the small creature's warmth pushed the cold away. He didn't notice the faint vibration running through the ground, nor the hum that seemed to rise from the very air. The hatchling did. Its eyes widened, its ears twitched, and a soft growl escaped its throat. It could sense him, the presence above, ancient and furious. Eli frowned. "What is it, little one?" he asked gently, but the hatchling only trembled. Clutching his sleeve tighter, its scales shimmered like wet gold under the flickering light. Then everything went still. The storm outside froze in place. The sound of rain vanished. Even the toy bird fell silent. Eli's breath hitched as the temperature dropped. He turned slowly toward the window. Through the sheets of fading rain, he saw a shape descending, enormous wings folded close. The clouds lit up with streaks of fire as the creature landed on the cliffs beyond the colony. The ground shook with the impact. Eli stumbled, catching the hatchling before it fell. He couldn't believe what he was seeing. A dragon, no, the dragon, the Emperor of the skies. The hatchling let out a cry, half joy, half terror. Its small wings fluttered helplessly. Eli froze, watching as the Emperor's glowing eyes turned toward the settlement. The sight burned through the glass, and for a moment, Eli thought he could feel that gaze pierce straight into his soul. The Emperor inhaled slowly, and the air itself seemed to bow. He could smell the faint trace of his child's scent in the wind, and beneath it, the metallic tang of human oil and machinery. For the first time in ages, the Emperor felt something unfamiliar, a pull, not of power, but of curiosity. The last human he had seen had been a soldier, screaming as flames consumed the battlefield, but this human was different, gentle, patient, and kind. The Emperor's claws tightened slightly, crushing a fragment of rock beneath him. His gaze turned toward the small workshop glowing faintly at the colony's edge. "Why?" he whispered. The word rumbled like thunder. "Why would a human show compassion to one of us?" Lightning split the sky once more, revealing his massive form outlined against the storm. The hatchling pressed closer to Eli, whispering something in its tongue. Eli couldn't understand the words, but he could feel the meaning. It was pleading, begging him not to move, not to speak. Then the Emperor's voice rolled across the air, deep and ancient, though not spoken aloud. It was inside Eli's mind, echoing like a heartbeat. "Human," it said, "what have you done?" Eli gasped and staggered back. The hatchling whimpered, hiding behind him. I was just helping," Eli whispered, his voice shaking, though the words never left his mouth. Somehow the Emperor heard them anyway. For a long, heavy moment, the world stood still. The storm's fury muted beneath the tension between two beings who should never have met. One mortal, one divine. The Emperor's wings shifted, a sound like mountains grinding together. "The child's toy," he said, his eyes narrowing. "You fixed it," Eli nodded slowly, his pulse thundering in his ears. "It was broken," he said softly. "And he was crying." A strange silence followed. The Emperor's eyes dimmed slightly, his expression unreadable. There was a memory flickering behind his gaze, a small dragon, laughing, clutching a similar toy centuries ago. Before the fires of war, before the silence, the wind rose again, and the Emperor's wings spread, blotting out the stars. "So the humans still know mercy," he murmured. "Perhaps not all of you have forgotten." And then, with one powerful beat of his wings, he was gone. The storm followed him, leaving behind stillness. Eli collapsed into his chair, shaking. The hatchling climbed into his lap. Curling close, the toy bird chirped once more. Faintly glowing, Eli looked out the window. Searching the clouds, the sky was empty now. But the echo of that voice still lingered in his mind. Somewhere far above, in the silent darkness, the Dragon Emperor returned to his palace. The ministers bowed as he entered, but none dared speak. The Emperor walked past them all and paused at the edge of his chamber. Staring out at the stars, "The human's name," he said quietly. "Find it." And for the first time in centuries, the Dragon Emperor smiled, not with cruelty, but with something close to curiosity, and perhaps something dangerously close to hope. Morning came slow to the human colony. The storm had passed, but the air still trembled with something unseen, like the echo of thunder that refused to fade. The streets were quiet, but whispers carried faster than light, spreading from one trembling mouth to another. Someone had seen it. A shadow in the sky, fast as a mountain, wings burning against the clouds. They said a dragon had come down during the night. Some laughed in disbelief, others locked their doors. But those who lived near the mechanic's workshop knew the truth. They had seen the fire in the sky and heard the roar that froze their hearts. Eli didn't sleep that night. He sat at his work table, staring at the toy bird glowing faintly on the shelf. The hatchling had curled up on a pile of cloth, sleeping peacefully as if nothing had happened. But Eli couldn't shake the memory of those golden eyes that had looked into his soul. He rubbed his temples and whispered to himself, "What have I done?" The words carried no anger, only confusion and awe. He wasn't sure if he had crossed a line or saved a life. All he knew was that something ancient now knew his name. Outside, the colony stirred and fear turned into talk. The guards walked the streets more often, scanning the skies. The governor ordered a communication sent to the nearest human fleet, claiming a possible dragon sighting, but the message never arrived. Somewhere between the clouds and the satellites, it vanished, burned by invisible fire far above in the Dragon Empire. The same rumor spread, only faster, sharper, deadlier. They whispered of a human who dared to touch royal blood, of a mortal who had fixed the air's sacred toy. They said the Emperor himself had gone to see him, that the sky had burned with his wings. In the great courts of the dragon nobles, outrage grew. "A human," hissed Lord Scareth, his silver scales flickering with anger. "He polluted the royal line with his filth." Another dragon, a crimson general, slammed his tail against the ground. "This is an insult to the Emperor, to our kind." It cannot stand, but not all agreed. A soft voice rose among them. Lady Seraven, the Emperor's advisor and one of the oldest among the dragons. "And yet," she said slowly, "His Majesty has not punished the human." The room fell silent. Her golden eyes glinted in the dim firelight. "If the Emperor allows a human to live after touching his bloodline, Then perhaps there is reason, she continued, perhaps. He saw something. No one dared speak after that. Back on the colony, Eli's quiet life was falling apart. His door shook from constant knocks. Neighbors came asking questions. Some begged him to leave, fearing the dragons would return. Others accused him of bringing doom upon them all. Eli said little. His mind was far away, lost in the memory of the Emperor's voice echoing inside his head. You fixed it. Those words replayed again and again, like a haunting melody. He didn't understand why it mattered, but somehow he felt it did deeply. The hatchling followed him wherever he went. Silent and watchful, it had stopped crying. And sometimes when Eli spoke, it seemed to understand. Its golden eyes were bright and full of innocence. But Eli knew there was something powerful behind them, something ancient. That night, as he closed his workshop, he noticed something strange. A small mark glowed faintly on the doorframe, a dragon sigil. Written in light, it pulsed once, then vanished. Eli froze, his breath catching in his throat. He knew what it meant. He was being watched again. Far across the stars, inside the Emperor's chamber, the crystal orb flickered, showing images of the human colony. The Emperor stood motionless, his claws resting on the edge of the viewing table. Beside him, Lady Saravan bowed her head. The nobles grow restless, she said softly. They demand punishment. They fear weakness. The Emperor's tail flicked, cracking the marble beneath. Weakness, he repeated, his tone sharp but calm. Is that what they call understanding now? Saravan bowed lower. The human's name has been found. His name is Eli Varane, mechanic, age 31, survivor of the Titan Wars. He has no family, no allies, no record of conflict with our kind. The Emperor's gaze darkened. A soldier, he murmured, and yet he fixes toys. He turned away from the orb, his wings folding tightly against his back. Prepare a summons, he said quietly. I wish to see him. Saravan hesitated. You would bring a human here? To the royal palace. The Emperor's eyes glowed faintly. He touched my son's heart, he said. Now I will see what he will do when he touches mine. Back on the colony, Eli felt the ground tremble once again. The hatchling lifted its head, its ears twitching. Eli turned toward the sky and saw something. Tiny points of light, moving in formation, descending like falling stars. At first, he thought it was a storm returning, but then he saw the shape of their wings, sharp and metallic. They were not natural dragons. They were draconic sentinels, royal guards forged from living flame and steel. The colony panicked, sirens wailed. People ran to shelters, but Eli stood still, the hatchling beside him, staring up at the descending lights. His heart pounded, and for the first time, he knew what was coming wasn't death, it was destiny. The sentinels landed, their claws slicing through the earth. The air shimmered around them, and one stepped forward. Its voice was deep and metallic. Eli Varane, by command of the Dragon Emperor, you are summoned to the Palace of Fire. Eli's mouth went dry. I'm just a mechanic, he whispered, but the words felt hollow. The hatchling pressed close to his leg, letting out a soft growl, as if it understood what this meant. The lead sentinel lowered its head, its fiery eyes burning bright. Refusal is not an option, it said, and as the winds rose again, lifting the dust and fear into the sky, Eli looked once more toward the heavens, wondering if those golden eyes were watching him now. He didn't know that far beyond the clouds, the Emperor already stood waiting, with a question burning in his heart that no dragon had dared ask in 1,000 years. Can a human's compassion change the fire of a god? The ground still smoked where the sentinels had landed, their wings folding with the hiss of molten air. Around them, the colony had fallen silent. Only the wind dared move, carrying the smell of iron and fear. Eli stood frozen beside the hatchling, his breath short, the world shrinking around the sound of the sentinel's voice repeating his name. He had been called many things before. Soldier, repairman, ghost, but never this, summoned. The nearest sentinel lowered its head, its metal scales shifting like sliding blades. Prepare yourself, it said. The Emperor awaits. Eli's mouth went dry. I can't go there, he murmured. I'm just... But the words died, because even he didn't believe them anymore. The hatchling tugged at his sleeve, its small claws trembling. A soft sound escaped its throat, pleading and frightened. Eli knelt and placed a hand on its head. It's all right, he whispered. I'll come back, though he wasn't sure if that was true. 2 guards stepped forward, one carrying a sphere of light. It opened into a swirling portal of gold and flame. Through it, Eli saw a glimpse of another world, Towers of crystal, rivers of molten light, skies alive with winged shadows. He felt heat brush his skin, gentle yet ancient, like the breath of something holy. He turned once more toward his workshop, the place that had been his refuge through years of silence. His tools lay scattered, the tiny toy bird perched on the shelf, chirping faintly as if it sensed what was coming. "Take this," he said to the hatchling, placing the toy gently in its claws. "Keep it safe." The child blinked up at him, eyes wet, then pressed the toy against its chest. Eli took a step forward and entered the light. Instantly, the air changed. Heat wrapped around him, heavy and alive. The ground beneath his feet was smooth black stone, glowing with red veins of energy. Above him rose arches of gold and bone, stretching toward a sky filled with shifting fire. He was in the palace of fire. Dragons moved through the halls, their forms enormous and graceful, eyes glimmering like jewels. Every one of them stopped when they saw him. Their gazes burned with disbelief and rage. Whispers rippled through the chamber like a wave. A human. Here. Blasphemy. He should not walk among us. Eli kept his head low, his heart hammering. The sentinels escorted him through long corridors lined with statues of dragon emperors past, each one carved from starstone, each one larger than life, their expressions fierce, eternal, unyielding. At the end of the final corridor stood two massive doors of obsidian, carved with ancient runes that pulsed with light. The sentinels bowed their heads and stepped aside. The doors opened soundlessly, and Eli stepped into a space so vast it seemed to swallow sound itself. The throne hall the emperor sat at its center, his wings folded like mountains at rest. Flames danced along the edges of his scales. His eyes glowed softly, not with anger but with something deeper, heavier. The same eyes that had stared through the storm. Now fixed on Eli, Eli bowed instinctively, his knees touching the warm stone. The silence stretched until it felt like the air would break. Finally, the emperor spoke. His voice rolled through the hall like thunder carried on breath. "Rise, human." Eli stood slowly. His legs shook, but his gaze lifted, meeting the eyes of the being before him. "You know why you are here," the emperor said. Not as a question, Eli swallowed hard. "Because I fixed a toy," he said quietly. A murmur spread among the dragons around the hall. A few hissed, others laughed coldly. The emperor raised a single claw and silence returned. "Not just a toy," he said. "A relic bound to royal blood." Eli frowned slightly. "It was broken," he said. "The child was crying. I didn't know who he was." The emperor's eyes flickered. "And yet you helped." Eli nodded. "Because he needed it." The words were simple, small, but they hung in the air with strange weight. The emperor leaned forward slightly, studying him. "You did not fear him," he said. "You did not hate him." "I saw a child," Eli replied. "Nothing more?" The emperor fell silent. His gaze drifted to the fire burning beside his throne. Within the flames, images flickered. Memories of wars long past, of humans and dragons slaughtering each other in endless fire. And yet here stood one who did not raise a weapon, only a tool to mend. One of the nobles stepped forward, his scales the color of molten silver. "My emperor, this human mocks our ways," he hissed. "Let me end him now." The emperor's gaze turned cold. "You will do nothing," he said. The noble froze where he stood, the heat of the emperor's stare pinning him to the floor. Then the emperor looked back at Eli. "Tell me," he said softly, "what do humans believe happens to things that are broken?" Eli hesitated, then spoke. "We fix them," he said, "because if something can be broken, it means it once mattered for a moment." No one breathed, even the fire seemed to pause. The emperor's eyes narrowed slightly, but there was no anger in them. "Only thought, deep and restless." "Very well," he said at last. "Then you will fix something for me." A pair of guards brought forward an object wrapped in chains. It hummed with strange energy, and when the chains fell away, Eli saw it, a sphere of crystal fractured by 1,000 cracks. "Pulsing with dim light, this," the emperor said, "is the heart of Pyrrhion. It once bound the peace between our kind and yours. It has been dead for centuries." His eyes gleamed. "Fix it." Eli stared at the artifact, feeling its power press against his chest. "I don't even know what it is made of," he said. "No human could—" "You fixed the impossible once." The emperor interrupted, his tone low but sharp. "Do it again." The hall went silent. Every eye was on him. Eli took a deep breath and stepped closer to the glowing relic. He reached out, feeling its warmth and pain, the hum of energy vibrating against his fingertips. Somewhere deep within the crystal, he thought he heard something, a faint heartbeat. Slow, weak, waiting. The Emperor watched him with unreadable eyes. "If you succeed," he said, "you will live." He paused, and the shadows around the hall seemed to darken. "If you fail, the flames will take you." Eli exhaled slowly, steadying his shaking hands. "Then I'll need my tools," he said, voice quiet but firm. A whisper moved through the court, disbelief mixing with fascination. The Emperor tilted his head. "You are not afraid," Eli met his gaze. "I've seen worse things than fire," he said, "but I've never seen anything worth saving burn." The Emperor's eyes flickered again, this time not with power, but with memory. The hall fell silent, the fires dimmed, and for the first time in living history, a human stood before the Dragon Emperor not as prey, but as something else, something dangerous, something true. The hall dimmed to a deep red glow, the air trembling under the weight of the Emperor's command. All eyes were fixed on the human who stood before the heart of Pyrrhion, a relic older than empires humming with dying light. Eli felt the heat rolling from it, thick and alive, every breath a reminder that he was standing too close to something no mortal should touch. He knelt slowly, his fingers brushing the cracked surface of the crystal. It pulsed faintly under his skin, like a living thing struggling to breathe. The cracks ran deep, spreading like veins through its core. Each flicker of light was a heartbeat fading into silence. Behind him, hundreds of dragons watched, their scales shimmering in the dark, whispers running through the crowd like wind across fire. "He will die," one muttered. "The human will burn before he finishes," another hissed. But the Emperor said nothing, his eyes fixed on Eli, unreadable and cold. Eli took a long breath. His hands trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of what this meant. He didn't understand why this mattered so much to the Emperor, or what this relic truly was. But he knew one thing. The same instinct that guided his repairs in that lonely workshop now guided him here. He reached for his toolkit. The guards hesitated, until the Emperor gave a slight nod, letting him work from the small pouch at his belt. Eli drew tools worn smooth from years of use. They looked small, almost pathetic, compared to the grandeur of the throne hall, but they were all he had. He placed one ear near the relic and listened. The hall fell completely silent. Even the flames seemed to hold their breath, beneath the hum of energy. He could hear something faint, like a broken melody, a rhythm out of sync. He closed his eyes, feeling for it, tracing each crack with the tip of his fingers. Eli whispered to himself, "Every machine has a pulse, even when it's dying." The words weren't meant for anyone, but the Emperor heard, his gaze sharpened slightly, a flicker of curiosity breaking through the mask of command. Eli began to work, using tiny strokes, connecting fragments of glowing crystal with threads of conductive alloy. The material hissed under his touch, biting at his skin. He ignored the pain, focusing only on the sound, the soft hum returning, one beat at a time. Time lost meaning. Sweat ran down his face. His hands shook from the heat, but he refused to stop. The relic's light grew brighter, then dimmed again, like a dying flame struggling to live. The dragons around him leaned forward, the air vibrating with tension. A noble dragon sneered. "He is failing," he said. "No human can repair the heart." But before his words faded, a low vibration filled the hall, deep and resonant. The heart pulsed, sending a wave of energy that rippled across the room. The dragons recoiled slightly, scales flaring. Eli gasped as the surge burned through his arms, leaving faint trails of light under his skin. He gritted his teeth, refusing to pull away. His voice came low, almost a whisper. "You're not broken, just waiting to be heard." He adjusted the final alignment and struck the surface gently with a small hammer. The sound echoed, pure and sharp. For a heartbeat, the crystal went dark, the entire hall frozen in silence. Then suddenly the heart flared to life. Light exploded outward, golden and white, flooding the hall. The dragons shielded their eyes, roaring in shock. The chains that bound the relic snapped and fell. The heart levitated gently, humming like a chorus of voices long forgotten. Eli stumbled back, shielding his face. The energy poured through him, through everything. It filled the cracks in the floor, lit the torches, and climbed the walls like living fire. The runes of the ancient hall glowed again for the first time in centuries. The Emperor rose from his throne, his massive wings unfolding slightly. The reflection of the glowing heart danced across his scales. His voice rumbled low. "It lives again." Eli fell to his knees. Gasping for breath, his hands were blistered, his arms covered in faint glowing marks that pulsed with the same rhythm as the relic. He didn't understand what had just happened, only that it had worked. The dragon stared in silence, disbelief and awe mixing with fear. "Impossible," one whispered. He touched the sacred flame and lived. The Emperor stepped forward, the sound of his claws echoing through the hall. He stopped before Eli, towering over him. The human raised his head slowly, meeting that immense gaze. "You repaired what even our ancestors could not," the Emperor said, his tone quiet but shaking the very air. "How?" Eli swallowed, his voice hoarse. "Because it wasn't just broken," he said. "It was lonely." The words struck something deep. The Emperor froze, his breath catching for a moment. The firelight in the hall dimmed, and the silence was no longer oppressive. It was sacred. Memories burned behind the Emperor's eyes, memories of his lost heir, of a tiny dragon laughing with that same mechanical toy, of a world before endless war. He saw himself reflected in the human's pain, in his stubbornness, in his will to fix what others abandoned. Lady Saravan, standing at the edge of the hall, bowed her head, her golden eyes soft. "The heart responds to spirit, not power," she said. Perhaps it recognized his. The Emperor looked down at his talons, then back at Eli. His voice came slow, deep, and uncertain. "You have done the impossible," he said, "and I do not yet understand you." Eli gave a tired, faint smile. "That makes two of us." A sound like laughter, quiet and strange, rippled through the hall. Not mocking, but alive for the first time in generations. The fire in the palace burned not in anger but in wonder. The Emperor turned away, his wings folding slowly. "Rest," he commanded. "You will be summoned again." As the guards led Eli out, the dragons parted silently, eyes following him with disbelief and quiet reverence. He walked slowly, each step heavy, his body trembling with exhaustion. The last thing he saw before the doors closed was the Emperor, standing before the glowing heart, his face half lit, half shadowed. And though the hall was filled with the hum of reborn power, the Emperor's thoughts were elsewhere, drifting to the one truth he could no longer deny. The human had not just repaired a relic, he had awakened something far more dangerous. Hope. Night fell across the Dragon Empire like a sheet of molten glass. The palace that had once burned with chaos now glowed with a softer light. Fed by the newly awakened heart of Pyrrhion, the relic pulsed gently, sending waves of warmth through the stone walls, its rhythm steady like the beat of a giant heart. Eli slept in a chamber high above the courtyards, the air still humming with energy. He had never seen such a place. The room itself seemed alive. Threads of golden light running along the walls, whispering in a language older than stars. Every breath tasted faintly of smoke and iron, but sleep did not come easily. When he closed his eyes, he saw the heart flashing, the cracks glowing, the Emperor's eyes staring into his soul. He turned in his bed, the sheets hot against his skin. He felt a pulse behind his ribs, matching the relic's beat. Too perfectly, too close. He rose quietly and looked through the balcony. Below him, dragons flew in slow patterns, their wings catching the light from the heart. Yet even in that beauty there was tension. He could feel it in the air. The nobles had not accepted him, not really. Their stares followed him like knives hidden in smiles. Somewhere in the dark halls beneath the throne, voices murmured, "The human carries its energy," one said. "It marked him," another whispered. "If the heart chose him, then perhaps it has chosen the next age." Far across the palace, in the Emperor's private sanctum, the great ruler stood alone before a vast mirror of flame. His reflection shimmered, shifting between his dragon form and something smaller, softer, almost human. He watched himself in silence, the memory of Eli's words echoing through the chamber. If something can be broken, it means it once mattered. He turned to the glowing heart hovering at the chamber's center. It pulsed brighter as he approached, the light tracing the outline of his claws. "Why him?" the Emperor whispered. "Why a human?" The heart pulsed once, slow and heavy. A faint image flickered across its surface. A small dragon hatchling, golden-scaled and laughing, clutching the same toy bird Eli had fixed. The Emperor froze, the firelight rippling across his face. His breath caught, a tremor running through his wings. It was his son. The laughter faded. replaced by a memory of fire, of ruin, of silence. He saw again the day the palace had fallen into war, the day his child had vanished amid the chaos. All they found was the broken toy, cold and still. For centuries he had kept it sealed in grief, never allowing it to be touched, never allowing himself to feel. Until that human's hands mended it, the Emperor stepped back, his voice breaking through the quiet. The hatchling. He is alive, Lady Saravan entered slowly. Bowing her head, "We searched the archives," she said. "A child with golden scales was sighted on the outer colonies months ago, near the human settlement where the mechanic lived." The Emperor's wings snapped open, fire curling along their edges. "You knew," he thundered. The air shook. "You let him wander alone." Saravan bowed lower. "We feared your wrath more than your sorrow," she said. "If he lived, we thought it mercy to let him hide." The Emperor's rage burned bright, but beneath it ran something else, sharper and deeper, hope tangled with guilt. He turned back toward the heart, its glow now a reflection of his own turmoil. "He fixed the toy because he cared," he murmured, "and in doing so, he brought my son back to me." Meanwhile, Eli stirred in his room, a strange sound waking him. It was faint, like the whisper of wings through air. He stepped to the balcony and his breath caught. There, standing on the edge of the railing, was the hatchling, its golden scales gleaming softly in the moonlight. Eli froze, unable to believe what he was seeing. "You," he breathed. The child chirped softly, eyes bright, clutching the same toy bird he had repaired. "How did you—" he began, but stopped, because the air around them shifted. Heat rising from the horizon, a glow appeared, moving closer, brighter, stronger. The sky itself seemed to burn. The Emperor was coming. His massive form filled the heavens, wings spread wide, his descent shaking the world. Eli shielded his eyes as the wind roared. The balcony trembled under the weight of the landing. And then all went still. The Emperor stood before him, filling the night like a living storm. The hatchling ran forward, chirping happily. The Emperor's eyes widened as the child pressed against his claws. The glow of the heart reflected off their scales, uniting them in light. The silence that followed was heavy, trembling, sacred. Eli watched, frozen, as understanding dawned on him. The hatchling he had saved was not some lost creature, not a refugee from war, but royalty, the Emperor's only heir. The Emperor bent low, his breath warm and rumbling. "You found him," he said quietly, the words rolling like thunder softened by rain. "You saved him when I could not." Eli shook his head slowly. "I just fixed his toy," he said, voice hoarse. The Emperor's eyes glimmered. "Sometimes small acts fix more than you intend," he replied. Behind them, dragons gathered silently in the sky, watching in disbelief as their Emperor knelt before a human and a child. The fire of the palace flared, illuminating the night in colors unseen since ancient days. Saravan stepped forward from the shadows. "The heart called him for this," she whispered. "The bond between flame and flesh has returned." Eli looked at the Emperor, at the hatchling nestled between his claws. "What happens now?" he asked softly. The Emperor's gaze lifted toward the stars, his eyes burning with something new, resolve mixed with sorrow. "Now," he said, "the world must decide if compassion is strength or weakness." And as the winds rose again, carrying the light of the heart through the empire, Eli realized that his life, once small and forgotten, had become part of something far greater. The Emperor had his son, but he also had a question that would haunt gods and mortals alike. Could mercy reshape destiny? Dawn spread slowly across the Dragon Empire, turning the molten rivers beneath the palace into mirrors of gold. The world seemed to breathe again, lighter than before. Yet beneath that peace the air still trembled with the memory of fire. Eli stood upon the grand balcony, the hatchling curled against his leg. The boy, because that is what the young dragon felt like to him now, slept soundly, its small chest rising and falling with the rhythm of the newly healed heart. Every beat echoed through the city, steady and alive. From high above the Emperor watched, his wings folded tightly, his gaze unreadable. The fire within his scales burned softer now, more human than God. Behind him the nobles gathered, their voices low and fearful. "He has changed," one whispered. "He kneels for a mortal." Another hissed, "What does this mean for us?" The Emperor turned, his presence silencing them. "It means," he said slowly, "that we are no longer blind. His words rolled through the hall like thunder without rage. The fire we worship does not only burn, it warms. He stepped forward, his shadow falling over Eli. Rise, he said, his tone deep but not commanding. More like a request. Eli obeyed, his heart pounding. He had faced engines that could melt steel, storms that tore cities apart. But nothing felt as heavy as standing before this creature of legend. You have given me back my son, the Emperor said, and restored the heart of Pyrrhion. The glow behind him brightened, painting the chamber in light. No gift I can offer will equal what you have done. Eli shook his head slowly. I didn't do it for a reward, he said. I just saw someone who needed help. The Emperor's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in thought. That is why you must be rewarded, he said quietly. Because you did not ask. He lifted one claw, and the air shimmered. Fire coiled around it, forming a symbol of intertwined flame and gear. It hovered before Eli, glowing like a living star. This mark, the Emperor said, is the flame of bond. It is the bridge between our kinds. Wherever you go, dragons will see it and know that one human once mended what even gods could not. The symbol drifted forward, touching Eli's chest. The heat was sharp, then gentle. The mark burned itself into his skin as light, not scar. A heartbeat that matched the relic's song. Eli gasped softly, the warmth spreading through him. He felt something awaken, a faint echo of the heart's rhythm inside his own, a connection to the living world he could not explain. The hatchling stirred and blinked awake, letting out a small chirp before climbing into his arms. The Emperor's expression softened. He is yours now as much as mine, he said. Guard him as you guard your craft. Eli hesitated. He belongs here, he said, with his people. The Emperor's gaze turned toward the distant horizon. His people have forgotten what it means to feel, he said. Perhaps with you, he will remember. Behind them, the nobles murmured again, fear mixed with awe. But the Emperor ignored them. He lowered his massive head until his golden eyes met Eli's directly. I once believed power was the only truth, he said. But you showed me something greater. Eli swallowed. What's that? Mercy, the Emperor said simply, the kind that does not beg, does not bend, but stands quiet and certain, even before a throne of flame. A hush fell over the hall. The heart pulsed brighter, and for a moment, every torch, every ember, flickered in unison, as if the world itself was listening. The Emperor straightened, spreading his wings. From this day, he declared, the war between our species ends. Let this human be known as the keeper of the flame, and let his kindness be remembered longer than our battles. Outside, the skies erupted with light. Dragons rose in swirling patterns, their roars shaking the heavens. But the sound was not of rage. It was a salute, a thunderous chorus of rebirth. Eli stood speechless, the hatchling clinging to his shoulder. He felt small, fragile, but alive in a way he had never known. The empire that had once been a myth now shimmered with possibility. As the firelight faded, the Emperor turned once more to him. You may return to your world, he said, or stay among us. The choice is yours. Eli looked down at the hatchling, who tilted its head and chirped softly, then back at the vast halls around him. He smiled faintly. I think, he said, I've already found where I belong. The Emperor gave a slow nod, the faintest trace of a smile touching his voice. Then the flame is truly shared, he said. The morning wind swept through the open doors, carrying the scent of ash and sunlight. The heart of Pyrrhion pulsed one final time, brighter than ever, lighting the mountains, the rivers, and the skies. And far below, in the quiet colonies of man, those who looked up that day swore they saw something impossible. A dragon and a human flying together, their shadows crossing the dawn. They said the world had changed that morning, not because of power, not because of war, but because one man had refused to let something broken stay broken. And in the endless sky above, the Emperor's voice echoed softly through the wind, not as a command, but as a promise. The fire that destroys, he said, it can also heal.